Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Celebrating the Brand Ambassador. I don't know what that was. I'm really excited to have with me today Javier Reynoso. He is the brand ambassador for Torres Spirits, the global brand ambassador for the Familia Torres. And then also I have with me Jenny Feldt, who is the Grey Goose Brand Ambassador for Central Southeast, with the exception of Florida. Because there's way too many brand ambassadors in Florida. There's so many. I'm really excited to have both of you here with me today. We have a lot of fun things to talk about. I learned some things from both of you when we were having our preliminary conversations, but I do like to start off with some beginning questions. The very first one is, I said your job titles, but feel free to say them again, and also all the responsibilities that fall within that job title. Jenny, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a really complex question, as we kind of touched on, because the brand ambassador role can be so many different things. And although the job description says one thing going into it, you oftentimes find yourself wearing many different hats, whether that's training distributors, which is a big focus, obviously, doing trainings with bartenders, bar owners, bar consultants, all the way down to, creating cocktails for large partnerships, such as the US Open or the Grammys. We're kind of tapped into a wide variety of things. So no 2 days look the same. It comes down to, and sometimes that means that I'm running to drop something off for our sales team at an account, within the market that I'm currently at. And so it can be a variety of different things, but I think really our biggest responsibility and role is to influence the trade and to really help bartenders grow and keep our brands top of mind.
I think that's exactly what that's a great explanation of what a brand ambassador does. And that's what makes us different than sales reps. Javier?
Same for me, thanks Jenny, because every day like a brand ambassador is a surprise. I mean, we touch different parts of the industry, different parts of the business. The main lines in my case is the education trainings, online education trainings in the market with a regular masterclass, attending the media when we launch a new product to an event, a big event, present this product, speaking about the characteristics of tasting notes, this kind of information, and attending the consumers, the brandy lovers that we have worldwide. Attending our team, because we have a small but very talented brand ambassador team, national brand ambassador we have in Mexico, Canada, US, Italy, Finland, etc. And I'm managing, trying to be an inspiration for the brand ambassadors that we have representing the brand.
Which is a big thing, they do, brand ambassadors, as we all know, is a lonely job. So having somebody that they can talk to and feel inspired by, I think is extremely important to the role itself, because you can kind of be out there on your own, and it's nice to have somebody to be able to turn back to. So Jenny, I know, and we're going to start with you because this is a loaded question. It's a big one. But I thought it was very interesting. So, and it's going to be like a 3-tier question. So you work in some of the most complex markets in the US. So it's going to start. First question is, which states do you work within? Which is the Central Southeast?
Sure. So I kind of, it's a little bit flexible. We have 6 full-time brand ambassadors for Grey Goose across the US, and there is some crossover for certain areas, certain markets, but I'd say, DC down through Georgia, over to Tennessee as well. And so a lot of variety of types of markets. I'm from DC originally, so that's home for me. My family is still based there, and DC is kind of the wild, wild west, open market. if you're familiar with the term, but they're, you know, in our 3-tier system across the US, we have 3 different types of states regulations on how the distribution takes place. And so
please break them down, because you work in a franchise, a control state, and you said open market, which is one I've never heard before.
Well, open state is probably the most common. There's 20 across the US. And what that means,
typical 3-tier. Right.
Okay. Typical 3-tier, you know, the manufacturer can terminate the wholesaler relationship at any point in time and swap to a different distributor. And so I guess that's probably the biggest advantage for being a supplier in an open market is, you know, if your distributor is not kind of holding up to what, you know, your agreement was, you can make changes at will. And so and you know, and that goes to say with discretion, you know, there are definitely still contracts you have to stay within for sure, but it's a bit different than in a control state, right? So North Carolina, Virginia, 2 states that I touch on, those are control states and rather strict control states. There's, you know, a variance amongst control states, but that basically means that the state owns the distribution. And so the distribution has to go through the state-owned liquor stores and like your ABC stores, if you've ever heard that term. And so that just means, you know, there's no price gauging you can get in the on-premise. It's all uniform across the board. And so that's kind of what that means. And so the distributor relationship is almost more like a broker when it comes to working in the on-premise. So it's quite different than an open state, like very different. And then I currently live and cover 2 of the most complex franchise states in the US, Georgia and Tennessee. And not a lot of people are familiar with franchise states. I think, you know, when I moved down here, I was the only full-time ambassador within our company that existed and operated within a franchise state. And so it was one of the first challenges that I had as a brand ambassador is like, what does this mean? And essentially what it means is the distributor, once you basically owns the rights to distribute the brands. Like once a wholesaler relationship is established, manufacturers or suppliers can only terminate after, you know, having shown good cause. And it's very hard to terminate that relationship and prove good cause legally. And so the individual state laws are also not uniform across the state. And so, for example, this does a couple things. It allows for local businesses to thrive. You know, we don't have our major supplier, our major distributors running, you know, the distribution across the state that like they do across the US. Local, smaller distributors can kind of thrive in these markets. And it also allows, in Georgia specifically, for retail stores, liquor stores, you can only have a certain number of licenses. So retail stores can't, you know, operate with a chain. You know, you don't see any Total Wine and More really existing within Georgia and Tennessee, with the exception, you know, there's not more than 2 in the state. And so I think that's a huge difference. So that distributor relationship is so much more important in a franchise state. Specifically, you know, you think about, and as I said, it's also more complex. It's not uniform across Georgia. We have within, obviously, Grey Goose, if you weren't aware that, you know, we're owned by Bacardi. And Bacardi as a whole, our whole portfolio is spread across 4 distributors across Georgia. Whereas in Tennessee, our portfolio is crossed amongst 14 different distributors. And in Tennessee, that changes based upon what part of the state you're in. Same in Georgia, but it's not as complicated. Tennessee, you can walk into a different county and it'd be totally different in the legal operation. It's just, you have to know.
It's like this big. It's like so town. You guys realize, Javier, like the county is the size of Manhattan or something, like really tiny. And it's like, oh, and then you literally just drove across the line and it's like, boom, you have a totally different relationship with the distributor.
Question is probably US the most complicated and amazing market on the world?
Yeah, but this is the most complicated of all the markets. We have to deal with all those distributors. So sorry, continue, Jenny.
And so I think, as I mentioned, that distributor relationship is very important and and I don't want to say more so than anywhere else, but it's just a little more sensitive. And so being able to understand that as a brand ambassador obviously is a very different thing than having to understand that from the sales team point of view. And so being able to really have great wiring and communication amongst, the sales team, the brand ambassador, and the distributor, as far as how we're communicating with accounts, how we're communicating with each other, is something that is very important here. And because we don't have our national partner distributor, which is Southern Glaciers, that exists across the open and control states, is all of the national programming that is agreed with them doesn't exist here. And so some of the tools that I can use in, say, North Carolina or Virginia or DC, I can't use here in Georgia. I can't use in Tennessee. I can't use in Arkansas. It's just the franchise part of the business oftentimes gets overlooked from the ivory tower, if you will. Yeah. But for us, it makes up almost 20% of the business. And I think that's something that is becoming more recognized and becoming more understood. And it's a big part of what I try to help, because I've been here now for going on 5 years, is to help educate, the broader team, the national ambassadors, everyone, to kind of understand what that relationship looks like. And when you come into a franchise market, how to kind of navigate it. And so that's
important. You're building a playbook, because it is so different. And I can't imagine having to deal with 14, like the amount of contacts that you have to, like, when I worked here in New York City, I just had my one group of sales reps. There was about 10 of them I worked with. All the product came out of one distributor. That was easy. I went in, you worked with, Charmer, and now the Diageo is now at Southern. So, great. You have that. They already have that relationship established. And now it's at work. And when you're in an account and you're like, all right, so it's this distributor. Like, I'm in this county. Here's the list. Here's the sales reps for this particular small spot in the world. And they only carry this many products of my brand. So I have to use.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have to think about it when you're trying to leverage a cocktail. If you're working with an account and, say, in Nashville, I used to be a St Germain ambassador, Grey Goose and St Germain. They really kind of work together in a lot of different cocktails. And so my distributor in Nashville doesn't carry St Germain. It's just a different way of working with your sales team that you have to respect and uphold and understand as you are working with your distributor to gain, menu placements or that kind of thing, which is also not necessarily part of our job, but comes with the brand ambassador role.
Exactly. It is. It is at the same time, if you're going to leverage, as you said, like leveraging your portfolio, which sometimes is very useful, and you have a very big one working with Bacardi. But if you start putting products into a menu, like, if you combine St Germain and they don't carry it and use something, they get really pissed off, because now you're bringing in a product from a different distributor onto a menu, and that can ruin the relationship with the distributor. So then you also have to know what products each distributor carries within that, which is the spreadsheet you must be
crazy.
be able to ever understand that. I mean, Javier, is it anything like in Spain? So what is it like, dealing in Spain? Like, how does the system work when you're selling?
Well, we have a distributor like in other markets, and the role of the BA is very important, exactly for the same that Jenny said. I mean, probably the first contact with the brand and the distributor is speaking about the marketing plans, the sales objectives, targets. And finally, the brand ambassador arrives with the briefcase, with the bottles, with the tasting. And that's another point. And I feel the people, the sales team or marketing team of the distributor relaxed and prepared to enjoy to the liquid and to the brand, of course, because like a brand ambassador, this is the other part to speak about the brand, the heritage, the values of the brand. Both, I mean, the elaboration process and the heritage and the branding are the pillars for me, and I try to put on the desk. And finally, this finish the circle. I mean, it's about the marketing, it's about the sales, but you need, like the distributor or a sales team, understand what the product is exactly.
No, exactly. And I don't mean, but do you have, so is there only one distributor you have to deal with?
We have just one official distributor. Of course, you can find the bottle in many small shops, but we have a main distributor, official distributor in each market. In Spain, same. Yeah.
And in Spain, is Spain a pay-to-play market? Like, I know in London, if you want your bottle on a back bar, you'll do a deal with the account. It's basically, here's the amount of money, which is completely illegal in the United States, but it's legal in Europe. It's standard. Is that?
Yeah, but it's not a practice that happen right now in strong. I mean, years ago, 15 years ago, probably this was the way, but right now is you must to convince with your product. Is I mean, the brands are not putting a lot of money on the market, not in the way that they used to use, but of course, this kind of incentives are on the desk, but it's not the main way to sell,
to build a business. Okay, yeah, because I've always heard about it, and I know, the artisan, and they would work with, and I would have these conversations with people, they would pay for all their glassware, and then there'd be a very specific drink just for Don Julio, and it'd be on that glass, and they would have paid for it, and it was just standard. It's not illegal, right? We are saying a lot of brands shy away from that.
Yeah, well, we try to work with all the education trainings, all that we can do with your accounts. We can check your best accounts and go to our Solera system or travel to discover the London cocktail scenario. Another imaginative ways than money.
Right. No, which I think is a better way. I think you build true relationships. Jenny, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I think that's the major difference between short-term and long-term success is relying on that dollar to get you an immediate whatever it is in the long run is never going to last, because at some point that budget's going to run out, or the budget's going to shift. And, you have to be able to build those genuine long-term relationships in order to be a successful brand ambassador.
No, absolutely. I mean, obviously, if you can do both, and it's an amazing thing. But if you can't, you're right. The relationship really is important. Javier, we were talking the other day when traveling markets. You mentioned something, something you find that you started doing, which was gathering research within the different markets. Because you travel to how many countries do you travel to?
Well, a lot, because my position is a global position. I'm based here in Barcelona because we produce here. The main office are here in Barcelona, but I travel in America, Asia, in Europe, a lot. And
what kind of information do you gather, and why? You brought up some great points at why you feel it's so important for as a brand ambassador to do this, because it adds value. Expand on that.
It's very valuable, I think, because I try to be very attentive to what the people drink, how they drink, the trends, and all that's happening around the bars and the market, and I try to apport this in our office. I mean, sometimes this is useful information for create new products or new strategies, because you hear or you see what the people exactly needs. Sometimes in the office, you don't have this information in the same way. And I try to apport like a contribution. Of course, this is just a contribution. My boss finally decide, but it's something very interesting that brand ambassador can apport to the rest of the team, because you, like brand ambassador, lives in the on trade, and you are on the on trade every time, and that's information that can be very important for the marketing people.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point, because a brand ambassador constantly has to prove their worth, because it can be the first position that can get eliminated. Mm-hmm. But by doing this, you actually are proving, even beyond like the building the relationships and putting it out there, like you're having influencing on strategy, correct?
Yeah, it's an influential, but in terms of apport this information, but of course we have a very big structure above us, but it's nice because you are traveling. Okay, you are going to do your masterclass, but you return at home with a lot of nice information, and that's good.
No, I think that's important. And Jenny, I'm assuming you do the same thing. I mean, you are traveling, as you said, to franchise states and things of that nature. So it's not it's something that people ask you for, or you just started doing it on your own because you realized it was important?
I started kind of doing more in-depth reports on my own, because I saw as you said, the influence that you can have on larger programming, which at the end of the day allows you to show your value. So yeah, anytime I'm traveling into another market, you come home, you don't just get to rest, you have a lot of work, a lot of reporting, a lot of admin, a lot of, what was happening in that market, how is it, because you're not there all the time. I think that when you're traveling out of your own market, you have to do a bit more of that reporting back to the team, because no one has eyes on it 24/7. And so I think it's way more valuable to show importance in that.
No, yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think it's a way to, building your career within your company. Staying silent is never a good thing. Just doing your job and keeping your head down is not something, because nobody sees you half the time. So they start to wonder what you do. And by bringing extra value, as you both said, by reporting back trends, seeing how they're drinking it differently can influence a marketing team. Like, oh, okay, this strategy is not going to work in that particular market because this drink is not the right fit for them, or, that practice, because they do it very differently there than, these other states or countries, right? So I think that's one of the most valuable things as a brand ambassador, in addition to your normal duties that you can just do for yourself and for the marketing team. So great stuff. Jenny, I wanted to talk about also, you are a new mom, right? So you are, and being a brand ambassador is somebody I know, because I did this, having a small child and being a brand ambassador can be quite hard, but also you were being pregnant. Being a brand ambassador and being pregnant is also hard. Now having a baby at home and traveling is really hard. So I don't know if the question is like, how are you handling it? Or, what's the hardest part of managing all of that?
I think there's a lot of different ways to answer that question.
Absolutely.
I think there's being pregnant as a brand ambassador of a liquor company has a stigma all in of itself. I felt a lot of challenges in kind of navigating what that was like, as far as being, I think what I found most valuable was just being as vocal as possible about what was going on, and that I was still fully capable of getting the job done. I think at first I was like, oh man, I really got to prove myself, because there's all this, I can't pretend like I'm, X, Y, and Z. And then it's like, no, like, if I need to sit down, I need to sit down. that kind of thing. And so that was probably the biggest learning curve when it came to, you know, my first child and kind of navigating this industry, which I'm constantly surrounded by liquor, you know, and being, you know, this stoic soon to be mom, you know, that can't be anywhere near alcohol, you know, that idea is very unique and challenging. And I respect all of the mothers in our industry that have faced that head on and taken that challenge. I think, you know, we all gain more respect and perspective when we go through the same things. But, you know, as a new mom, I think, when I started traveling again and getting back to work, the biggest challenge really was, you know, missing my son. Even when I'm in the market, you know, leaving him at home and finding and trusting in someone else to take care of him was a really hard thing to do, let alone in today's day and age, finding childcare is really, really hard. Getting into a daycare right now, I think I mentioned to you, is like getting into Harvard. Like there's like 1 or 2 year waits for the better daycares. And so that's been a challenge for us. And so I'm fortunate, you know, I do have support at home with my partner and with a nanny that we're working with part-time. And so when I travel, I feel comfortable, but it doesn't make it any easier to kind of, you know, I was over at our distillery in France, and his dad is sending me, you know, a video of Sebastian, that's my son's name, taking his first couple steps. And I was like, no, like hold him down, like don't let him do it. I want to be there. And so I think it's just finding ways to, you know, make that gap, you know, being able to FaceTime with him. I think technology really helps with today's day and age, being able to, you know, see your child while you're away, but also finding time for balance and finding time for family outside of, you know, the job. Taking time to do that has become very, very important to me, and my company is very supportive of that. So I'm very, very thankful.
Yeah, I think that those are all a great point, because it is, as somebody who said it is very challenging, and you do need a lot of support. And something I learned later on was definitely about having more open communication with my bosses, so that they could help me, you know, schedule, because scheduling is everything. Schedule things, and we talked about this yesterday. I gave you advice you didn't ask for, but a habit of mine, you know, sitting down and saying, all right, I need to be able to schedule things months in advance. So let's fill out my calendar now so I can arrange all the childcare and all the things that are happening. Because Javier, I don't, do you have kids? I don't even know. I
have a daughter, 7 years old.
You know, it can be very, and it always seems to fall on us as women. I think it's because we're more stoic, as you said, and it's not because men don't want to help it. I think we just kind of take it all in and make it ours, because it's very hard for us to let it go. But people have asked me advice about being a brand ambassador and being pregnant. I'm like, yeah, don't do that. I'm like, nope, it's not an easy career to do. I'm like, go find something else to do for a while, because I know it is not here. So kudos for you, Jenny, for making it work, because I know how challenging it can be. Marie Myers, I'm assuming that's you, Jenny. All right.
She's my counterpart in Miami, and is just an incredible human. She came up this past weekend for Sebastian's first birthday party.
That's very sweet. Okay, so I do also want to talk about, so Javier, you worked for one of the biggest, we both worked for Diageo, right? At one point. You know, it is, and now you went from working with this very large company to working for this family-owned company, right? So a lot of people are making career choices out there right now. There's a lot of brand ambassador jobs available. People are out there in the world, you know, searching. So tell us the difference, like the advantages and disadvantages of working for the larger company and then going to a smaller company, because I think there's a lot of both.
Very, very nice question. First of all, let me say that
Thank you, Jamie.
we both work in Diageo, but you work on a very high level. I remember very well your time in Diageo, and was an amazing performance. I feel very comfortable in both situations. In Diageo, you can experience and feel the superpower that a company like Diageo or Bacardi have. In a super big global event like World Class, you feel this incredible power. Or when you see the bottle of Tanqueray or whatever, or Bacardi or Johnny Walker in Diageo in a film, in a TV show, it's a very big pro because it's a very big company. I feel very comfortable in Diageo, and I feel that I learn and enjoy a lot. In a family company is different, of course. You must be very attentive to the values that the family promotes, because finally you represent the family, and actually you can travel with the family, and our boss, you are a member of the family, presenting a product. This is a very high responsibility for me. Finally, they put their names in each bottle, and that's very
that's amazing. But I'm assuming you had to take on more responsibilities, right? And when you came into a smaller company, because as somebody who worked for Diageo, you can be, and I work for the agency, you can be, you're kind of over here, and your responsibilities, you don't have, sometimes you're lucky, you get intimate, you get to be on the brand team conversations and helping with product and things of that nature. And you really have to work for that, which, I highly recommend within any company. You really work to try to be in those conversations and those meetings. But when you're in a family-owned company, it's kind of almost automatic. So tell us about that. When you kind of came over there, it was a very different
perhaps this is very risky to say, but in my opinion, in a big company, you have an umbrella in terms of a protocol. But when you work with a family owner company, you don't have this protection. You must to do 100% well, because the connection with the family is very close, and you must to be very attentive to the protocol in all the occasions, 24/7.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because you're right. Because working for an agency, that's very sweet, Jamie. No, you do have that protection. Working for an agency that works for the brand, you do have, that is one advantage of working with an agency, is there's a layer of protection. I could have a boss, if Diageo was asking for something, and I didn't slightly always agree with it, because it would be a weird request from some weird, and I would talk to my boss and be like, hey, can you deal with this for me? And they wouldn't see me everybody from Diageo wouldn't see you every day. But working for the smaller company, you now have more responsibilities, right? You get to work on some cooler things because it's much more. So expand on that.
Absolutely, yes. Like you said, in a big company, you have people to do different things, a lot of different departments to work. In a small company, you must to work and learn in not strictly roles like BA or roles that are very close, but they are not the strictly presentations, education, training. And I must to do many things very close to the sales, very close to the marketing, and amplify a little bit my role. And that's very enriching for me, because this allow me to learn different perspectives to the business. And I think that is a good thing to do anytime at your life, like brand ambassador.
Yeah. So you get to work on product development now, right? And help with strategy now as well.
Yeah, I try to be very useful to my boss. My boss is the global marketing director. Of course, they have a very high responsibility and many different business open. And I try to be useful to my boss and help in the way that I can. And that is, I'm learning about marketing, what word they say, okay, GPA, ECA, ECO, trying to understand a new language for me. But finally, day by day, I feel enter the marketing strategy department.
Which is great, and you don't always get to do that when you work for a much larger company. So to be able to do that is fantastic. Jenny,
can we talk about how
Yeah,
many? Can we talk about how many acronyms there are across the sales team and the marketing team? It's like learning a new language. It's
it really is. I was going to say when I went to Anheuser-Busch, for me, there was a whole nother level of new words and acronyms that they use. So every company has their own acronyms, and then there are ones that are common across. In my Brand Ambassador Academy, I actually have I found and I researched the lingos and terminologies, like the most common ones. So I have it in there as a download for new brand ambassadors, so they can have it, so they can understand exactly what a majority of things mean. Because again, I remember the first time I heard O&D, I'm like, what is O&D? And people kept talking about it all the time and why it was so important. And I was like, what is this? And I didn't ask for it. And then finally, something October, November, December. I'm like, oh, okay. Why couldn't you just say October, November, December instead of owned? And now it's September, October, November, December. So I'm assuming there's a new acronym out there.
But finally, we must to admit that with 3 letters, they explain a very complex concept very well.
They do. Once you understand the language, you're in. It's something to master. So yeah, let's talk about other challenges. So Jenny, you started off part-time, right, as St Germain Brand Ambassador in DC, and you said one of the biggest pressures you had was about really showing where you spent not showing where you spent your time, is that you chose to spend time more in DC. It was your home market, and people are kind of pressuring you to go to Virginia and these other markets, little Arlington and things of that nature. And because I get it, people want you to spend time and money there. And, which can be very pressured because you're like, oh, I want to please everybody and make it happen. But you did something really unique. You started learning how to prove your case of why you were spending your time where you were. And I think this is important for brand ambassadors to hear, because you do get under pressure, and learning how to prove your point correctly in a way you're not just like whining. You're actually going like, here are numbers, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So can you expand on that?
Yeah, of course. So I had a really unique role on the St. Germain team because I was based in DC. They wanted a majority of the focus in Virginia with, I think the original request was like 70, 25, and then 5% in Maryland. And so I kind of looked at that from someone that grew up in DC and like really understands the market. I mean, that's where I started my career in this industry, besides a few college bars in Pittsburgh while I was in school, But I think what was interesting to me and was also just the difference of those two from a trade perspective, the influence that DC has on the surrounding, the DC, Maryland, they call it the DMV, if you will, on Virginia and Maryland. Like, people are looking to DC for the trends. And so that's difficult to showcase when you're looking at data. Like, most of these positions are created based off of sales numbers, which are brought in by the entire volume of the state. But DC, as we all know, is a unique situation because it only exists within, a certain square of maybe
very small little tiny square places.
Very small, tiny square that is not a state, although is fighting to be a state for certain reasons, not necessarily this one. But I think, showcasing that influence as far as what we're trying to do as brand ambassadors. So I would take a group of bartenders from DC over to Virginia and try to actually show them, what's going on in Virginia, while also influencing, the DC market. And then the return of how many people would show up to Virginia events versus come into the city, into DC, and come to trade events it was like night and day. And so you would even find more Virginia bartenders would come into the city, into DC, than they would attend events in their own state. And so I just kind of kept a running record of, okay, well, this is the attendance, this is the amount of sales we got, this is the longevity, like, did we gain, what was the return of investment on these different kind of dollars spent within these different programs. And I was able to kind of combat and completely swap the role to the point where when I moved on to Grey Goose, the person they hired after me was only DC. And so I feel, you know,
Validated.
I feel like I think I kind of got the point across in, you know, the short amount of time that I kind of ran those 3 different markets. And I was able to really kind of showcase the value of a city that I love so much that often throughout history has gotten overlooked by larger brands because of this exact reason. And I think that has changed a lot in the last 5 years even, you know, as far as DC being recognized on a global scale, as well as on a national scale in the US. You know, there's just, it's the influence that small little area has on the surrounding is unmatched. But
no,
I might be biased.
Yeah, of course. But DC is great, and Derek Brown and when he had his bars up there, and incredible, a lot of great bars, great cocktail scene, and it does have a lot of influence on, especially the surrounding area. But I think it's a great point about, you know, numbers speak. And the important thing is not about a feeling, or because executives do not listen to feelings. They listen to numbers. So proving numbers and showing the return on investment and showing numbers, like what was happening, those are the things that actually speak volumes. So it was very clever of you to start really tracking it so you can kind of show it and say, look, I'm not just saying this because I love DC. I'm saying this because the numbers speak for themselves. And I think that is something that's really important to understand as a brand ambassador. You do have power. You just need to use their own methods, you know, use how executives speak and use things that really speak to them. And numbers and dollars is the things that really do make a difference. So I wanted to also get into and Javier, we started because we talked about this, and I thought this was really interesting. And this actually goes to feelings and making people feel something, which was about your philosophy on tasting and training people on your brands to gain their buy-in. And Jenny, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this as well. But Javier, expand, like what is your philosophy of really getting people to love your brand?
Well, I try to go right to the point, speaking about the vineyards, the distillation, the aging process, or Solera system, because it's very important to make the people feel in love with your brand, and the vineyards is very evocative, and all the process is very evocative. And I try to going for this emotion part of the brand, trying to put the people on the way to discover for himself and smelling and drinking a good spirit in general. But I try to explain simple. I mean, I always open to the hard question that they have about the elaboration process, but I try to explain in the simple way. And going to the tasting. I mean, I explain all the liquid about what you are feeling right now. You feel the cinnamon notes, the vanilla notes. How is this product on your palate? And I explain the elaboration process, starting about with that. I mean, if you feel your alcohol high, low perception because we distill in column, but we distill in Charentes, I try to use the sense to explain the elaboration process.
Gotcha. But also, I mean, I'm assuming you tie in the family in there as well to kind of hone it all in? Because you got to fall in love with the family, right?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, and of course, let me complete with the other part. Of course, sometimes you need to explain how this brand can help you sell more cocktails in your account. That's the numbers are very important. Of course, I try to show how our brand develop nice cocktails, the heritage of the brand in the history of cocktails, but why you can use Torres 15, for example, for cocktails, because the powerful notes remain on the glass 15 minutes after the bartender serve, and I can show you. I shake a lot with the sidecar, or I mix a lot in an old fashion, and you feel this powerful. I try to be very practical explaining the product and trying that the people catch the benefits to use our brand.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And also, I mean, brandy is definitely a category that is growing again. And, you know, there's a huge gap in the market. There's a lot of room for growth. It was something right before the pandemic that people were talking a lot about, like brandy, and there's a $50 billion or $50 million gap in the industry, and so room for growth. So do you find, I mean, in Europe, is there a big challenge to getting bartenders to use brandy in cocktails?
Well, honestly, it's not a challenge that bartenders use, because they, of course, they use vodka a lot, rum a lot. Absolutely, we don't have the best-selling category in the cocktail bars. Of course, we have brandy, but brandy have his lovers, and bartenders understand very well how they can play with brandy, because they know all the heritage that in the golden age brandy have, and they use with new flavors. That's not a problem for me, the bartenders. The consumer is a challenge, because consumer used to drink the brandy in a very old way, the snifter glass, you know. In the old way, you need like brand ambassador of this category to try to renovate the speech in brandy, speak about the sophisticated elaboration process, but going right to the point that, okay, we have a super sophisticated elaboration process. Anyone knows that. But how you feel right now? You feel this superlative smelling, superlative alcohol, or not? If not, I'm mistaken. If you feel fantastic, amazing. I mean, the challenge for us is not the bartender. Bartender knows very well all the categories and how they can play with the different categories, but the media and the consumers are.
Gotcha. No, and what is the biggest market? I think you said Mexico.
Yes, it's Mexico for us. Yeah, in the 70s, the brand goes to Mexico. Mexican people adopt like a national brand practically. We have a lot of brandy lovers there in Mexico. Our second market is here in Spain.
Wow, I learn something new every day. And Jenny, I mean, vodka is such an interesting one. As somebody who worked for a vodka for a long time, and it's an interesting education category to really get people to understand the differences between them. I mean, obviously, Grey Goose having such a big name behind it, it's you know, usually on the must order list. But I'm sure there's some challenges. So what is your philosophy of training people on vodka, on Grey Goose? And then, you know, what are some of the challenges you face in the marketplace?
Sure. Yeah, I know I probably have a lot of similar challenges as you, Javier. I think, you know, when it comes to trainings, to really be able to, I think, make people feel a certain way. You know, you can say a number of things, but it's really about how that person feels walking away from your training. So you definitely want to make sure that you are resonating emotionally with the group of people that you are presenting to. So it definitely, the strategy changes based off of, you know, who I'm training. Definitely a stark contrast between a consumer versus a trade education. So I think, you know, being able to be flexible in your training strategy is very important. but always, making sure that you're telling distinct stories, that they can kind of be like, oh, like, that is unique. And that is unique to Grey Goose. Like, a lot of people don't really understand this category because it is so oversaturated, because it is, one of the most vast categories in the world. And so I think being able to educate on, and what we focus on with our education is telling the history of the category, where it came from, how it started, how it traveled, where it is now, and where it was, in 1997 when Grey Goose was created, and why it was created. Telling the story of the people behind the brand, the community behind the brand. I think you look at larger brands such as Grey Goose, and you're like, oh, it's this mega company, they're just pushing a button and just Grey Goose appears. Like, no, there's a very unique operation that goes behind our product, and there's a reason why we are, seen as this premium within a category that never really had that before, and there's a reason why our product, sets itself aside from other vodkas in the category. It's, I think being able to educate on the entire category and being an expert in that field, staying ownable, making sure that everything you're saying is not just stretching the truth. I think, oftentimes you see brands come in and they're just hammering out, just trying to impress. And it's like, no, the trade is going to follow up on what you're saying. So making sure you're staying ownable in your claims is very important.
Absolutely.
As far as, making sure you're getting across those messages. So I think when people look at the vodka category from a lens of it being the foundation of all other spirits, I know that's a really controversial statement, but it really is. And so I think being able to kind of look at it from a different perspective and being able to educate on that has enabled me to find success in that influence, as far as, gaining that, loyalty to the brand. It's like, oh, well, a very unique distillation process that is proprietary to Grey Goose. Like, wow, like I didn't even realize that it was so innovative, and that there's the same maître de chai that came from cognac that is, tasting every batch. Like, there's not a lot of other vodka brands that can kind of make those claims. And so I think I'm in a unique space. Obviously, I work for the brand because I truly believe in it. And I think that also resonates with people as well. If you're passionate, that feeling translates to the people that you're educating. And so I think, as far as you said, the challenges with the vodka category, I think throughout history, things were much worse 10 years ago than they are now. I've seen a lot of shift in respect for the category, which is a goal of ours as ambassadors, is to kind of, be a part of that influence and shift. And, somewhere 5 years ago where a lot, and it changes by market, because
expand on what that was, because Javier might not be aware of like what was happening, 10 years ago in the US, when it came to vodka. I mean, I know it because I was working in it and you were working, but yeah.
Yeah, it was just kind of, this shift into support small craft, local, anti-large brands kind of thing. And I was there as a buyer. I totally, and I feel like I did it blindly without really understanding, what larger brands bring to the table and how they got to be a larger brand. And I think that's what a lot of times our education involves really expanding on where we came from, where we started, and how, you know, we continue with the same process, the same people, the same everything, from the entire process. And so I think it makes me in my trainings have to emphasize that within a category that historically, you know, has just been like, oh, well, all vodkas are the same. But now we're seeing, you know, the definition of vodka has changed. You know, where it used to be odorless, flavorless, colorless. Now they've removed that from the definition because it was creating this.
What is the new definition now? You know,
so neutral grain spirit, you know, distilled up to 96% on the still, bottled at 40% in the US, 38.5 over in Europe. And it can be distilled from any fermentable sugar. There's no regulations on where it can be distilled, but that part of the definition where it said it was odorless, colorless,
I know, which is
flavorless,
crazy.
would mean that all vodkas are the same. And I think that's what people started to believe. It's like, oh, this is meant to be a flavorless spirit. Then why does it matter if I'm using X versus Y brand and spending half the price for this one? And really getting people to understand that the ingredients in that bottle, the raw material you're distilling from, the process, how you're distilling, the water you're adding, you know, where that is just like any other product, you know, going to completely change the flavor profile in a really unique way. And so being able to hone in on those skills in a category that's has more subtle nuances and teaching people that is really important.
No, I think I 100% agree with you. And I'm glad I had heard that they had changed it, but I wasn't sure of the exact definition that they were now using. So thank you for that. Because I used to do those competitive tastings, you know, and I worked for Ciroc for many years. So a Ciroc is a very distinct nose, and it's made from grapes. And there's still some countries that say it's not a vodka, like Canada. They still sell it. I don't know if that's changed, but they were like, no, it can't be a vodka because it had a very different definition there as well. Within brandy, is there, you know, that I said the challenges consumers and how they're consuming it. Is it also, I mean, the bartenders understand it, but do you see it growing? Like, is it slowly growing? Is it becoming more of a standard to have a brandy cocktail on the menu?
Yeah, yes, of course. We feel that they understand day by day how they can play with brandy. They love the category, and we feel that in the last 3 years, brandy sound a lot. Well, we are very happy because we are brandy producers, and brandy have a normative that allow us to be a little bit more innovative than cognac. You know that cognac is, we respect a lot cognac, of course, but it's very restrictive normative, and brandy is a little bit more you can play a little bit more, not too much, and that's allow us to create a Cristalino brandy or a smoked brandy. And that's when you put smoked brandy in the hands of the bartenders, wow, exploded mind. I can use the toasted notes, I can use the grape notes, but I can use also the smoked notes to create a new signature cocktail with brandy. That's very nice, and that's very, very good for us. Yeah,
I didn't realize. Yeah, you're right. I guess cognac does have to follow some very strict regulations. They can't really alter anything, and I didn't realize in brandy that you can make some innovations, and that's really cool. So some good things are coming down the line. I love hearing that. All right, so we're getting to the end. So I love to wrap it up, but always with 2 questions. I used to only have one, now I have 2. And one is, so first one is going to be, if you could give one piece of advice to a brand owner looking to hire a brand ambassador, like, you know, whether it's about the type of person they hire or budgets or whatever you think, what's your one piece of advice you'd give to somebody who's just hiring a brand ambassador?
Can I?
Yes.
No doubts, no doubts. You need a brand ambassador because the BA is the perfect match between your brand and the market. Sailors, owners, media, etc. Anyone else like a brand ambassador is the brand ambassador open the door. Salespeople is something a little bit more cold. It's very hard relation at the beginning because they are speaking about numbers, and the brand ambassador and a sales team, when they goes to the on-trade together, in my opinion, is the perfect combination. A sales team and a brand ambassador, perfect combination. I use a lot in my roles. I need a sales, and I make the effort to go with the sales team on the routes, because when you goes to the account with BA and sales team, it's a perfect match. Absolutely, 100% useful for a brand. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with that. It is a perfect symbiotic relationship. Sales reps, are great and they do their job, and I don't ever want. They are very hard. But they have lots of brands to work.
Yeah, that runs very well.
Ambassador brings the passion and the love for that particular one, helps build the actual reputation, and it makes people fall in love and become advocates for their brand.
Yeah. They say sometimes, "Oh, another sales guy." No, I'm the BA. Okay, no problem. I have the glasses. I have the bottle. Okay, and the conversation is another conversation. Yeah.
It definitely is. Jenny, what's your advice to a brand owner bringing on a brand ambassador?
I think you really have to make sure you're hiring a team player. And a team player, I think that kind of adds on to what you were saying, Javier, someone that is able to wear many different hats and doesn't necessarily stick their nose up at having to do the quote unquote smaller stuff or the whatever that might be. I think it's really important to have a team player in a brand ambassador role that can really kind of do it all and be able to have the drive and the motivation to do that as well, because it's not easy, as we kind of went into. It's not easy. You'll have stuff thrown at you. Being able to pivot and be like, okay, well, I'm going to have to pick up and do this myself. Having that initiative is not really something that you can teach. So I think finding people that have that is very important.
Yeah, having that entrepreneurial, it's sort of like an entrepreneurial mindset. You're kind of the team player. You understand there's lots of different things happening at the same time, and you're willing to dive in and be able to, really, take on whatever that needs to happen. But you also need to motivate yourself because you're on your own a lot of times. So the last one is one piece of advice you provide a new brand ambassador that you wish somebody had told you when you first started.
I can take this one. I wish someone had told me that it's okay to rest. It's okay to not always be on and take time for yourself, to be able to balance all of the demands that the job throws at you. Finding that work-life balance, that mental health balance with the job is incredibly challenging. Mm-hmm. You have late nights, early mornings, and you really need to find time to give back to yourself and recharge those batteries, or else you're just going to burn out and be miserable and then not perform the way that you can.
Absolutely. And it is a job where you don't feel like you're actually working sometimes, because some of the stuff you're doing is really fun, but you are working. That is your job. You might be out in a bar, but you might be also home. If you didn't have that job, you might be sitting on your couch and relaxing, but no, you're out in the bar and you're speaking to bartenders or you're at that fun event, but it's still work. So, and it can be quite exhausting. And Javier, how about you?
It's a very good point to raise because you must to be 100% in your skills and your energy in your presentations. But you know that probably you spend 4 hours before talking by phone or passing emails. And after that, you change your clothes and you go for your assistants. And you need to change the mood. And you need to be very well rested to change your mood and be friendly to in your masterclass.
Mhm.
That's a very good point. Another point is, in my opinion, is to learn, to study a lot. Or in your category, you must to know your category 300%, and others categories also, because like Jenny said minutes ago, speaking about how present Grey Goose and or others high-end spirits, is very important to know very well your elaboration process, because this call makes the difference in a negotiation. You can have a very nice networking like a brand ambassador, be a very nice public relations people, but finally you must to explain your product perfectly. You are the last word, or master distiller is the last word, but you are very close. It's very important. And if you are working like a brand ambassador, enroll in a brand ambassador academy. Right now we have a brand ambassador academy. Years ago, no. It's very important. And go to the on trade is very important for me, like BA. Don't be an office people 100%. You need to go to the on trade, because the brand is living in the on trade. You need to know how your brand is developing in the on trade. Sometimes you feel, okay, we rocks guy in your office, but when you go to the on trade, you don't rock. You need to go to the on trade and knows what is happening. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think those are great words of advice. You definitely need to be out there, obviously, and the worst part of our job is to do all the paperwork, and you do need office time. That being said, you do need office time. I used to block out days on my calendar that nobody could book me. That's be my words of advice. I would book out my Mondays and Fridays, and then any other day of the week. You could have me Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then sometimes on the weekends. But those 2 days are my office days to catch up and plan and schedule and do all the things, because that is also really important. Do your expenses, which we know, and which can be, or your reporting and trend reports. And those are all things are also really important. But yeah, and then know your product inside and out. Continue education, take things like the WSET, travel and see competitors and what they're doing, so you have a good understanding of, what the whole category looks like, so you can really have intelligent conversations. This was such great advice, such great best practice we learned today. It was so lovely getting to catch up with the two of you. I look forward to hopefully doing it in person at some point. But until then, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for those of you tuned in. If you missed anything, this is going to be online on Facebook for the next 2 weeks, or you can always find it on the website, my website, Duff on the Rocks, or on YouTube at Celebrate the Brand Ambassador. So with that, I'm going to say thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Elaine.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Javier.
A very pleasure.
It was a pleasure. And then go and have a great weekend.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye, Jamie. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.